Today's local leaders say, don't be deceived. Here's Kayla Carlisle from Madison County.
Not a lot of new information was shared this afternoon, but Dr. Karen Landers with the Alabama Department of Public Health had a message she wanted to share.
I think earlier in the week, persons thought that because we had a decrease in numbers, that meant we had a decrease in cases, and that's not absolutely correct.
Recently, the number on the ADPH's website has been backlogged, meaning the numbers may not be as up to date as they appear.
As a result of that, over the next few days, as we continue to assign case investigations, we will see some increase in our numbers.
Dr. Landers wants people to remember that their continued effort to social distance is very important in keeping the community's numbers down.
If a person has been tested for COVID-19, they need to stay at home until they get the results, okay? Because that is extremely important as a preventive measure in the event that they turn out to be positive.
Madison County Commission Chairman Dale Strong reported 9 total inpatients with COVID-19. 7 of those hospitalized patients are at Huntsville Hospital, while the other 2 are at Madison, none of whom are on ventilators.
Our neighbors in Marshall County have 3 inpatients. Helen Keller has 4. Decatur Morgan has 16, with 12 patients under investigation, and Athens Limestone Hospital has none.
Now, the numbers are not expected to make a big jump, but that can only happen if everyone continues to do their part.
I thank each of you for taking time to tune in on these updates. And again, what we have been doing has worked. We must continue. And I thank each of you for allowing me to serve as your chairman of the Madison County Commission.
Putting the Valley first, I'm Kayla Carlisle, WZDX News.